Hi, this is Dr. Stephanie Wautier, and I'm the host of Conversations with a Chiropractor. I believe healing often begins with connection, and that's really what this podcast is about. These are real conversations about health, healing, life, and the stories that shape us. Some guests come from the wellness world, some come from the community, and some simply bring a life experience worth sharing. My hope is that each conversation invites you to listen, learn, reflect, and maybe see your own life or healing in a new way. Sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and enjoy this conversation with a chiropractor.
Before we begin, this episode includes one guest's personal health story and clinical perspective on gut health, functional medicine, testing, parasites, detoxing, and related topics. The experiences and opinions shared in this conversation are for educational discussion only and should not be taken as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Conversations with a Chiropractor does not encourage listeners to self-diagnose, begin a cleanse or detox protocol, start supplements, or make major health decisions based on podcast content alone. If you are dealing with ongoing digestive symptoms, unexplained weight changes, abdominal pain, constipation, diarrhea, fatigue, or other health concerns, please work directly with a qualified healthcare professional. As always, we appreciate you tuning into the show. We hope you enjoy this episode of Conversations with a Chiropractor.
Today on Conversations with a Chiropractor, I am joined by fellow chiropractor Dr. Kate Davis. She is also a functional medicine doctor, and she specializes in gut health. She has battled chronic gut issues for nearly a decade, only to find out that she had a parasitic infection. She leveraged her healing journey, and she has helped hundreds of women overcome gut conditions, from constipation and bloating to IBS and acid reflux and parasite infections. Kate, thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie. I'm really honored to be here.
So you had your own personal health journey, right? You started chiropractic school, was it in 2014?
Yeah, 2014. Yeah.
And you had been having a lot of gut issues at that time?
Yeah, they all kind of started, in that first quarter of school, which is really bad timing, right? You're just starting a doctorate program and then just, severe gut issues. It was not fun. Yeah. Not a good time to have this.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, do you feel like stress brought it on?
Oh,
Or-
absolutely. I mean, I had so many, there were so many things going on before that. Like I had, and I'm sure we'll touch on this at some point, but I had a really severe head injury when I was 18. And, that brain gut connection, I think that was a big trigger for a lot of those issues. But it really just started with, acid reflux. And then it just progressed into all these other issues that, we're going to chat about. So yeah, it could have been who knows how many things. Terrible diet growing up. I was one of those skinny fat people where like nothing I ate made me gain weight. So I just ate candy all the time and processed junk and played sports a lot. So I was really skinny. So I was like, oh, I'm healthy. This is fine. So probably a combination of multiple different things, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean, like, this might be diving in like head first, but I do want to talk, like, let's start talking about that brain gut connection for our listeners. Like, we know 70 to 80% of our immune system is in our gut. We know like so many of the neurotransmitters are, basically they come from our gut. Like, do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually went in and specialized in like functional neurology, as a chiropractor, which is like this small little subset of chiropractors who, fix people from head injuries and chronic pain. And, if you actually go to like an actual functional neurology clinic, they deal with more severe cases like Parkinson's and things like that of that nature. But yeah, I had, gone into chiropractic because of that head injury, because I was still having neurological issues that, every neurologist I went to is like, oh, you're stuck this way. There's nothing you can do. And, you look at research from the last, 30, 40 years, and it all says something completely different, that the brain is plastic, which means it can change and it can, you can actually fix these head injuries that people have, and you don't have to be stuck that way. And so that's kind of how I got into, chiropractic. And, you and I both know it's very holistic, very much, anything in the body can be fixed. We just have to look at it from a different approach and a different perspective. So in terms of brain health, The biggest thing is that when you get some sort of head injury or even a whiplash injury, which research has been finding that whiplash injuries are actually more damaging to the brainstem than actual head impacts, which is kind of crazy. So
Wow.
think about all the people with car accidents, and they're like, "Oh, I feel fine," but then they start getting these weird pain patterns on like one side of their body or weird stuff that
Mhm.
pops up after, and it's because of that whiplash that just damages, that bottom part of your brain and the brainstem, and that's
Mhm.
where your vagus nerve is housed. And so this is the big brain gut connection is you have this nerve in the bottom part of your brainstem that goes and innervates or controls all of your internal organs, especially your gut, your gut, liver, heart, whatever, all your internal organs are controlled by this vagus nerve. And so if you get damage to the brain and you don't ever really do anything to fix it, it'll just slowly start to weaken that signal from your vagus nerve or from your brain to your gut. And eventually, that's one of the biggest things that stimulates bowel movements, right? Is vagus
Mhm.
nerve function. It
Mhm.
stimulates that peristalsis that you get, that muscular contraction around your intestines that squeezes
Mhm.
all those toxic waste out of your body when you go to the bathroom. And so if you damage that nerve, you'll see a ton of gut issues with people, especially constipation. And
Mhm.
so that's what I was really dealing with at the time was severe constipation. I mean, I went
Mhm.
almost 2 weeks without a bowel movement, and I was on
Wow.
Marilyn. I was 24 years old. It was really, really scary. I was a
Uh-huh.
former D1 athlete. I was very
Mhm.
fit, very athletic. I didn't look like someone who had these issues. And it just goes back to, a lot of stuff we're going to talk about of the quality of your food, previous
Mhm.
head injuries, stress, huge,
Mhm.
huge trigger for gut issues. And anyone starting a doctorate program, you and I both know this is going to be really stressed, even if it's a good stress, it's
Yeah.
new, it's a lot, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of studying, a lot of class time, a lot
Mhm.
of sitting, so it can be a huge stress on the body. But that's how I got into all this was just everything all kind of happened, right at once. And it all started when I was, in chiropractic school, 24 years old, really healthy, like the fittest I'd ever been in my entire life. And somehow my
Mhm.
gut wasn't functioning. And, I
Wow.
went to the doctor, the GI doc, and they gave me 2 terrible options because that's what you do. You go to the doctor, right? If you have gut issues.
Yeah.
I didn't think at the
Right.
time like a chiropractor could help me. And so he said, "Hey, we can either give you a drug that has a permanent side effect of, like facial twitches that don't go away." So that's a very common side effect of this drug.
Hmm.
They diagnosed me with gastroparesis, which basically means the food in your stomach doesn't move into your intestines. It just sits there. And so
Wow.
I had, severe stomach pain, constipation, bloating, acid reflux, like all this horrible stuff. I could barely eat any food before feeling extremely full. And so I was just miserable. And they said, "We can give
Hmm.
you this drug or we can remove your intestines." And I was like, "Well, I'm never coming back here again because those are terrible options and there has to be
Yeah.
another way." And, I
Yeah.
was so blessed to find someone in chiropractic school. I asked around, I was like, "Hey, do you guys know anyone who can treat this stuff naturally?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah, you got to go see, this functional neurologist." And I was like, "Okay, whatever." And they're like, "No, no, no, he has a background in myofascial release massage." And I was like, "Okay, sure." And he just did this like gentle massage on my abdomen. Didn't know what the heck I
Mhm.
just paid for when I left the office because it felt like nothing. For anyone who's ever had, myofascial release, which is where you're working on that tissue in between the muscles and all those layers of fascia in your body. But I left that night and I swear I lost like 10 pounds. I had like 5 bowel movements that night, the
Wow.
first time in 13 days. So almost 2 weeks without being able to go to the bathroom at all. And everything just came out after he just did this gentle massage in my belly. And I was like,
Wow.
what the heck did he do? And so I was just so blown away. I kept going back and he ended up fixing my gut issues for the most part. And, I was fine for about a decade as long as I kept a really strict diet, paleo,
Mm.
gluten-free, dairy-free, like as long as I didn't stray outside of this crazy diet that I was on,
Mhm.
then I was fine. And then I had another stressful life event happen about a decade later. And, everything came back and it was worse than it was the initial time. And I realize now
Mm.
it's because of all those chronic infections I was dealing with. My friend was in town, functional medicine doctor, and she's like, "Kate, you either have parasites, Lyme disease, or both. Like, this is not normal for you to have all
Mm.
these issues." And, because in addition to the gut issues, I was now getting extreme fatigue dips throughout the day and my sleep
Mm.
was off and I just felt so tired all the time. It was
Mm.
just awful. My hands were swelling up when I would work out. Like my lymphatic system was a mess. It was the most bizarre thing that had ever happened to me. And she
Mm.
was able to figure out that I had parasites. She did some testing, huge parasite infection, lots of other stuff going on as well. But for me, it was really removing the parasites once she put me on this really specific detox protocol. The second month, I passed this 3-foot long parasite, gigantic,
Oh
like
my
super
gosh.
thick. Like it looked like a little snake living in my body. I was like, where was it living? Like, I don't understand, like I know we have space in our abdomen, but what the heck? And so after
Well,
that 3-footer came out, I had hundreds of other ones, all different shapes and sizes as well, but especially after that
wow.
3-foot one came out, all my symptoms started to disappear, and within 4 months, completely healthy, completely brand new. My energy was, like, the highest it had ever been since I was maybe a teenager, and I lost, like, 20 pounds. I think a lot of it
Oh
was
my gosh.
inflammation, like, crazy stuff that happened just from
Yeah.
getting rid of a chronic infection, and so I
Yeah.
just went all in on functional medicine after that because I was so excited. I was telling all my chiropractic patients, I was like, "Oh my god, look at this, like, this worm came out of me," and they're like, "Oh, gross." They're like, "I wanna do it now," and so I started, like, detoxing all my patients and seeing really great results, like, people who'd had migraines for years, and all of a sudden, it's like, "Oh, we did testing and found out they had mold toxicity." Got rid of the
Mm,
mold, and the migraines finally cleared up, and, I'd
wow.
done, like, adjusting and muscle work and neurology and all that stuff, and we'd gotten good progress, but it wasn't until you got that last piece of the puzzle that it really resolved a lot of people's health issues. So I just got super excited, after that because it completely changed my life. And I'm able to now eat gluten and dairy. And like, obviously, I do a very,
Wow.
very clean diet most of the time, but I can actually go out to eat now and not feel terrible when I leave. So that
That's
for me was the
amazing.
biggest thing. Yeah. Yeah.
That's really subscribe for more full episodes released Wednesdays. I'm thrilled to share a product I trust and my patients love, Lemon Grove Oil. It's created by Dr. Jerry Del Canton, formulated to be absorbed super quickly, meaning neck pain, back pain, and arthritis relief come quickly. It's all natural with no sulfites, no parabens, and it's naturally derived, no preservatives. Something that's so important to us these days. If you want to feel better fast, give it a try. You won't be sorry. Visit lemongroveoil.com and use code Dr. Stephanie for 10% off. Amazing. I know someone who has had a gut issue similar to yours. Sounds
Mhm.
like for you, neurology was the sort of the first piece of the puzzle for you, though, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah,
that
for
was
sure.
the thing. Like it was like your concussion and your brain injury and that brain gut
Mhm.
connection. But do you think that you had parasites all along, or do you think that you got a parasitic infection somewhere in that decade?
Yeah, I think that I had it for a while because even when I was a teenager, I would get random stomach pains and like it wasn't anything I ever thought was a big deal, right? You're a kid, you're just like,
Yeah.
oh, whatever. I probably ate too much Chinese food when I went out or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I'd had random gut issues since I was a teenager. They weren't severe though, so I just ignored them and just kind of went on with my life. But I didn't realize how important food was back then. Like I remember, growing up in the 90s, you're told to eat cereal. So you eat cereal all the time and
Yeah.
you're eating,
Yeah.
hot dogs and mac and cheese and PB&J sandwiches and that's pretty
Yeah.
much your diet,
Yeah.
when your parents aren't cooking. So I
Mhm.
think it was a combination of so many things. But I mean, in terms of a parasite growing to be 3 feet long, that doesn't happen in a few years. That's like decades. I mean, those things
Wow.
they start microscopic. So for it to go
Mm.
from that to 3 feet long like that, it had to have been in there for a long, long time. And I had a lot of the symptoms of parasitic infection when I was a kid too. Like a lot of kids will, if they're younger, they'll be picky eaters or they get, sharp pain around your belly button or even like bloating and a little bit of constipation. Teeth grinding is a big one as well. And then if you wet the bed past the age of like, a normal age, like 5 or 6, if you're doing it like 7, 8, 9 years old, that's usually a sign of parasites as well. So I had
Oh,
some of those symptoms when I was a kid. So I think it was just in there for a long time. But I just
wow.
never, it was really that all the stress just compounding with
Mhm.
like undergrad and then going into grad school. And I think all that stress just shut off my immune system and allowed the parasites to just go haywire and start overgrowing in the body pretty
Yeah.
drastically. So,
I want to talk to you about food allergies because it's really interesting that you said for like a decade you were off of
mhm.
dairy and gluten, but that is very, very prohibitive. And yeah, every restaurant you're like, is this sauce? Is there dairy in the sauce? So how like what would you even tell our listeners? Like, is there a time that you've got to maintain that very, very, very like low allergenic diet or that very low inflammatory diet while your gut is healing?
Yeah, I think that's definitely really important because I didn't even try to reintroduce dairy until I was, months after I was done with the detox. And gluten,
Um,
I think I tried it around like month 5 or 6 when I was feeling really good and it didn't bother me, but I still slowly reintroduced it because I knew my body hadn't really had much of it in about, like 9 years, so I didn't wanna go
Yeah.
overboard, but, yeah, I think there's definitely important times, and it's not that gluten and dairy are bad for you, like, I want anyone
Mhm.
listening to this, like, to know, like, it's not the gluten or dairy, that's why people can go to Europe and eat whatever they want and be completely fine. It's the way it's processed, the crap that we spray on it in America, and the way that the cows are treated before getting the milk that causes gluten
Mm.
and dairy to be so bad for you. It's all the additives, it's all the ways that, we manage livestock in the US that makes it so detrimental to people's health. And so, yeah, in the healing process when you're really healing up your gut, especially if you have parasitic infections, it's really important to kind of stay away from those triggers, right? Because we're trying to calm down inflammation, get the
Mm.
immune system back online. And so you don't want to be adding in some of those trigger foods, but it's really different depending on the person. But again,
Yeah.
most people who come to see me, they've already been off dairy or gluten or both for years by the time they see me. And then, we clear out all these infections and we heal the organs and we get the immune system back online and they get all these lifestyle things in check. And all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, Dr. Davis, I ate sourdough last weekend and I feel great. I didn't have any bloating. And these are people who used to look pregnant after they ate bread. And they're just like, oh my God, I can eat bread. And then I'm like, okay, slow down. Don't overdo it. Like you want to
All right.
slowly build it back up because there's some people who just go way overboard and they're like, well, I can eat it now. So then they'll eat like a whole loaf in one weekend or like half a block of cheese and then it sets them back like a month in the healing process. And I'm like, what were you thinking? And they're like, well, one piece was fine. So I figured I'd eat a whole block. And I'm just like, why would you do that? But
That is
it's
what is
like,
wrong with that's what's wrong with America, right?
yeah,
We're like all or nothing,
I know.
nothing or all.
Exactly. Yeah, that all or nothing mentality for sure. So
Mm.
but it is possible to heal these food sensitivities because what I always tell people is if you didn't have an issue when you were a kid, it's not a true allergy. It's a sensitivity that's been developed because
Mhm.
that gut lining when it breaks down and you get leaky gut, which is basically where your cells in your intestines become so inflamed that they start to just create these huge gaps. And now toxins, infections, and large food particles can slip into your bloodstream. And, there's a lot of downstream effects to that, but just related to the food sensitivities, large food particles like gluten and dairy aren't supposed to be found in your bloodstream. So your immune system is going to be like, what the heck is this doing here? It's going to tag it as a foreign invader. And now every time you eat that food, it creates some sort of inflammatory response, whether that's bloating or acid reflux or constipation or loose stool, depending on the person, migraines, for some people. And that's basically what happens. So if you can just remove those triggers that are damaging the gut in the first place, like mold and parasites and fungal overgrowth and, heavy metals and whatever else might be, damaging the gut, like high stress, if you can get that nervous system down into that rest and digest state and allow that gut to heal up, all of a sudden those food sensitivities disappear because you're not triggering the immune system every single time you eat it anymore.
That's going to be so encouraging for so many listeners who feel like they
Mhm.
never will be able to have a piece of bread again or a piece of cheese again.
Yeah.
But we do have to caution people that they can't just jump on Instagram and think that this gut cleanse that, you
Yeah.
know, some celebrity is doing is like the thing for them, right? I mean,
Mhm.
healing takes time. Now, your healing journey, you had like a decade in between sort of your two big exciting like breakthroughs, but healing for people's guts is really a long process, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the person. I think the reason why it's so long for most people is because they don't know what's actually causing it. Or they just
Mm.
assume, like, oh, I'm getting older. And that's what their doctor tells them is, well, you are getting older, so you might not be able to digest certain foods. And I just look at them and I'm like, you're 37. You're not old. Like, you're not 60. You're not like 60 or 70 years old. Like, then I'd be like, okay,
Yeah.
maybe, we can improve some digestion. But it's just crazy, like, how much these people are just, they go to the doctor and they're just kinda brushed off as like, "Oh, whatever, a lot of people have those issues," and it's not normal. You
Mhm.
should not be having
Yeah.
gut issues and digestion issues and these food sensitivities in your 30s and 40s and 50s, like, that's not a normal part of aging, but I think we've just normalized
Yeah.
it so much in America because our food is trash. We're exposed to so many toxins because so many chemicals are unregulated in our food
Mhm.
supply and our hair care and our, daily things that we use on a daily basis that it's
Yeah.
so hard to even maintain, normal healthy organs.
What do you tell people when they come to you in terms of like, well, we're going to talk a little bit about what you do in your office, but I want to even go like to a farther space. So
Uh-huh.
somebody is driving right now and they're drinking their morning cup of coffee. What do you tell people in general about food, about the food they eat, about the source of their food? Are we to just really search for organic food? What do you tell people?
Yeah, I mean, it's really important to the best of your abilities to get organic produce whenever you can. And the reason for that is most of the produce in the US is sprayed with, Roundup, and the main component of that is glyphosate. And anyone who's been on social media and is interested in alternative health kind of knows what that is. But there's been a lot of talk around, glyphosate, because it is known, like if you look at research studies, it's known to create leaky gut, which can lead to all those food sensitivities and bloating and eventually joint pain and autoimmune disease, which is really common in America, unfortunately. It's known to cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's known to cause in kids neurodevelopmental disorders. So you think about whatever you put in your body, that's what your body is using to rebuild your cells and keep you alive. So it's really important that the quality of your food, it's not a diet. There is no magic one cure-all diet out there. I hate to break it to you guys. I know we all like to argue about it, but it's really just the quality of your food. Like if you love doing paleo, great. Just make sure that your meat is really good quality. Like make sure if you're eating seafood, it's caught from the ocean. It's not farm raised salmon. That stuff is horrible. And they actually dye the meat because it looks gray when they cut it open. So they have to dye it. They have to put a food dye in there to make it look like real salmon because it's not real. And the way that they're raised and fed is just, almost as bad as, the cattle and chicken industry in America. And so, looking for like wild caught salmon or cod or whatever fish you like, looking for regenerative farming when you're looking for, like eggs or beef or chicken or any sort of meat. Do you want to look for regenerative? You can also look for 100% grass-fed or grass-finished. If something says grass-fed, but you don't see grass-finished or 100% grass-fed, that means that it wasn't actually fed grass its whole life. And even with the grass-fed marketing, there's all this other stuff kind of below it. So I know it can seem overwhelming and frustrating, you guys, but just do the best you can. Like if you just start to make these slow, small changes, it's going to compound over time and lead to better results with your health. So I know it's frustrating with like how corrupt our systems are here with like organic marketing labels and grass fed, but just keep learning, keep growing, keep trying to find like local butcher shops or local farmers markets to buy all your food and produce from, because that's going to be the best, most nutritious source anyways, versus something in a grocery store has been shipped an average of, I think it's over 1,500 miles, and by that point most of the nutrients are gone. And a lot of times they'll put them in these little gas chambers to keep them looking fresh. And so it's like we're getting this frankenfood in our grocery stores. And so the more you can buy locally, the better off you're going to be. And just looking for good quality meat, good quality vegetables and fruits, trying to get organic whenever you can. Because if you're constantly ingesting small amounts of this glyphosate and other pesticides and herbicides, you're going to kill off a lot of that good bacteria in your gut that helps with so many functions in your body. Because the intestines aren't just for digesting food. You have this whole ecosystem of bacteria that regulates your hormones, that helps with your mental health, because serotonin and dopamine are primarily produced by these bacteria and stored in the gut. So I've seen a lot of people's mental health issues completely resolve from healing their gut or get significantly better. You also have, obviously absorption of nutrients, production of certain nutrients like B vitamins are reliant on good gut bacteria. So there's so many different functions. It's not just about like, oh, I just want to be able to digest my food and go to the bathroom every day. It's like, no, you're affecting every system, the brain gut connection, there's even a connection with your digestion organs, the liver and the gallbladder, to, thyroid health and so many other functions. And once we get to this point where we realize that the whole body functions together, it makes it really easy to see how all these little things really add up over time and just create a really healthy person. It's not just good food for digestion and good sleep for brain health. They all interconnect. Like good sleep is also for hormones, and good brain health is also going to affect your immune system and your hormone production, and everything is so connected in the body. And so I think that that's a good place to start in terms of food quality. And then avoiding seed oils. Seed oils are extremely inflammatory to the body. There's even a lot of research showing that you're more likely to get, sunburns when you go out into the sun if you eat a high seed oil diet, which is crazy. And then versus if you eat animal fats, you don't really sunburn as often. It's just crazy stuff that we see in research that nobody ever really hears about, right? Because there's so much money in all this other stuff like processed junk in the healthcare industry and big pharma. And, anyways, I'm preaching to the choir with you, but hopefully that makes sense to your
Well,
audience.
this is so good for our listeners. And, when you say seed oil, I know what that means, but like tell our listeners what they're eating, what's in their cupboard or what's at the grocery store that contains seed oils.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, anything in the center of the grocery store, all the processed food, 99% of it is going to have seed oils in it. So seed oils
Yeah.
are these highly refined, industrialized oils that they squeeze out of soybeans and corn and like certain plants to create this oil when you could just be using olive oil, butter, ghee, and coconut oil. That's what I recommend for cooking oils.
I'm
But
glad you
canola,
mentioned that. I was going to ask. Yeah.
yeah, but things that are seed oils, if you look at packaging, it's gonna say, excuse me. If you look at packaging, it's gonna say canola oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, high oleic sunflower oil. Even some of them will say organic, cold pressed, and those might be a little bit better. But the reason why this stuff can be so detrimental is because it's extremely high in linoleic acid, and the amount that's found in like 2 teaspoons of seed oils is equivalent to so many ears of corn that you could never actually naturally consume in the world, that it's your
Mhm.
body's just not used to that much of that specific type of fatty acid in your body. And it can
Uh-huh.
actually start to cause breakdown at the cellular level because it is a highly inflammatory oil. So if you're just eating a little bit of that, like for example, my favorite crackers use sunflower oil, which is super annoying, but they're the only crackers that are like healthy. Every other ingredient is healthy. And that's the only time I eat seed oils is like when I want these little salty crackers. But every other time I'm eating like, whole foods, like the actual food is the ingredient, beef,
Uh-huh.
chicken, lamb, vegetables, fruits, whole milk from, a regenerative farm or A2 milk if you want to look for that kind of marketing. And so it's really just the quality of your food that's so important. If you just avoid seed
Yeah.
oils and just stick to the outside perimeter of the grocery store, and a lot of people don't know that one of the highest organic groceries in the US is Walmart. So if you want like cheaper, because everyone's like, oh,
Okay.
organic is so expensive, just go to Walmart. It's not expensive there
Huh.
and it's organic.
I
So yeah.
literally never knew that. In fact, I usually try to avoid that place, but
Yeah,
that's
but for
amazing.
people, yeah, and I mean, it's obviously like if you have farmers markets available, go there
Mm.
first. Number one
Yeah.
place to get produce. It's going to be high in nutrients because they just pulled it from the ground or the tree or whatever it came from,
Mhm.
probably the day or two before. So it's going to be very highly packed in nutrients.
Mhm.
But if you're someone who lives like, in Michigan in the winter, you guys don't have farmers markets. Like it's icy and cold, so you kind of have to go to the grocery store. So
With
but
you.
there's all these other, things you can do, like ordering food from like Imperfect Produce or getting Butcher Box or one of those like meat delivery services to just deliver good quality food to your door. That's also an option too. So there's so many options out there, but just don't get overwhelmed. Just start small. So if you're starting
Mhm.
small as like, I'm just going to shop in the perimeter of the store, maybe not everything is organic or grass-fed or whatever, that's okay. Just do the best you can. Start with just whole foods that are real, nothing that
Mhm.
comes in a bag or a box or, whatever, a can, and just start there because I guarantee you'll feel so much better when you just start eating real whole foods. That's really the best place to start in terms of diet.
That is really great advice. Yeah, it's really great advice. The interesting thing, even though it's winter here, like 10 months out of the year, we
Yeah.
do have a lot of local farmers. We do have amazing produce and we do have like grass-fed
Mhm.
beef available. So that is really pretty astounding about the area that we live, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because I know you guys, that's funny that you say 10 months of winter. Because everyone
That's
I talk
maybe
to,
exaggerated.
yeah, but everyone I talk to is like, "Well, it's really nice for those 2 months of summer," and I'm like, "But what do you do for the other 10?" Like, what are you talking
Yeah.
about?
Snowshoe,
Yeah, it looks beautiful,
snowmobile.
though. I've seen
It is
pictures, so
beautiful.
it does look gorgeous in Michigan, yeah.
So the people who come to your office, tell us a little bit about what you're going to do for them. Do they do a big intake? Do you want to know like what they're currently eating, what their symptoms are? And then what tools or technology are you using to identify that they have
Mhm.
parasites or mold toxicity? What is it going to look like for someone who comes to your office?
Yeah, it's a great question because I think where a lot of people go wrong, and you kinda mentioned it earlier of like, "Oh, I saw this cleanse on Instagram and I wanna try that," is if you just blindly do a cleanse or a detox, you could really mess yourself up, and I'm sure we'll get into that too, but the best place to start is, like, yes, with a really thorough intake form. Like, I always tell people, "Hey, the form I'm gonna have you fill out before we first meet is probably gonna be the longest form you ever fill out, but it's gonna give me a good idea on, what infections or toxins might be going on in your body, what organ dysfunction you might have, if stress is a big thing that we need to address during the healing process. And all these other things, because I want to know, like, do you have a history of head injuries? What surgeries have you had? Like, big life events, did those happen before all the health issues started? Because that tells me immediately, like, your brain is stuck in fight or flight. We got to get it down to a safe level so you can heal without feeling horrible in the process. And so all those
Mhm.
things are super important. So really big intake form, but then we go through, all their whole health history. I walk them through my whole process of healing, and then, going over the importance of like how to detox safely, like why we're looking at all this stuff. Because a lot of people, they don't really know much about functional medicine, or they don't really know, how mold or parasites could really affect them. And so I like to teach in that because I think it's really powerful. When patients know why they're doing something, they're more likely to do it and get better results. And so I really like to do that because I think it's so important to just break down their blood work even and say, hey, this is what this number means. Don't worry about this. This is the actual functional range for it versus medical ranges, all sorts of important stuff. And it's really just opening people's eyes to this new world of healthcare that's not as scary, because it's not like, like this stuff isn't that bad. We can fix it. So just know, like, even though your glucose is like this and you're in pre-diabetic stage, I've also seen lots of people after they detox, their insulin gets cut in half and it's back down to normal levels. And there's so many things interconnected in the body that I think it just makes people kind of have a sigh of relief of like, okay, this is possible to reverse it. I'm going to be okay. And so I think that's a big part of it, is just giving people hope in that beginning stage. And then going over testing, obviously it depends on what you suspect. So obviously, since I work with gut issues, there's multiple different routes I like to go. So you can use, I really like the gut zoomer test and the total tox burden test. Those give you a really good picture of, do you have mold toxicity, heavy metals, leaky gut? Do you have potential liver issues, parasites, fungus, viruses, things like that? But stool tests do miss parasites pretty frequently. So the test that my friend actually used on me was a hair follicle test, which I was super skeptical about until I saw that 3-footer come out. And I was like, oh, this thing was legit, because I'd had a stool test. And like, that was the first thing the doctor did was a stool test, and it was negative for parasites. And I had hundreds of them come out. I mean, I was just like, how did this test miss it? And this happens to so many people, Stephanie, where they come to me and they're like, no, I've done like 5 or 6 like stool tests. They're always negative for parasites. And then we do this hair follicle test, shows parasites, and they see dozens of them come out while they're detoxing. And so that's the only test I found that really truly picks up on them pretty accurately. So I really like doing that one with most people, and it's a lot more affordable than doing, gut zoomer and total tox burden. Those ones tend to be a little more expensive. But yeah, that one really shows you a lot, like, do you have leaky gut or gallbladder issues, liver dysfunction, what infections and toxins are in your body? So there's multiple different ways you can go about it. And obviously, like, if you suspect something else, you can order, specific blood work or maybe more testing. Like if you suspect the MTHFR gene mutation, some people ask me to just order that for them. And I'm like, okay, cool. We can just throw in the gene test in there, see if you have that to work on. But yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways you can go, but I really like those tests because they give you a really good insight into your 3 drainage organs. So these are the organs that remove toxins and waste products from your body on a daily basis. And that's where a lot of people's health issues come from, is when you get gut issues and you can't poop anymore, a lot of those toxins and waste products just build up until you reach your threshold. And all of a sudden you start getting brain fog or energy issues or joint pain or hair loss or weight gain. And all these things just happen because your body can't get waste out efficiently. And so it just builds up in the cells and creates inflammation. And, that expresses itself in so many different ways. So I want to know, do you have leaky gut? Is your gut working? Is it inflamed? Is your liver functioning well? Because that, you can't always see that on blood work. It's really tough to pick up on that. Even if you have normal liver enzymes, you could still have some liver dysfunction going on. And then gallbladder dysfunction, which again, doesn't really pop up on blood work. There's like one enzyme you can check for, but other than that, it's like getting a HIDA scan done or just going off someone's symptoms. So I feel like as a doctor, you have to go off symptoms, medical history, and testing and put together this picture. And how can I efficiently and safely get this person's health back on track while removing all these things that are damaging those organs in the first place, like the parasites and the mold. And so it's really important to open up drainage first before going after mold toxins or parasites, because otherwise you can get really nasty detox reactions. And I've had to fix quite a few people who have had those reactions, who reached out to me, because I talk the most about parasites on Instagram, obviously, because of my story. But so many people are like, hey, I tried a parasite cleanse. I feel terrible. Can you fix me? And then once I explain the drainage pathway, they're like, oh, that's why I felt awful doing that. And it's just like this light bulb goes off. And I'm like, yeah, because we got to heal your liver and your gallbladder struggling. And we also got to, lower stress, because if you're constantly in that state of stress, you're going to create that leaky gut. That's a big trigger for leaky gut that we talked about earlier, is chronic stress, which I feel like most Americans have because of our culture. So.
Absolutely. I want to talk about stress a little bit. The buzzword these days, I feel like, for not just chiropractic, but many, many, many different like professions and modalities, is like your nervous system, and I feel sort of like protective over that as a chiropractor. I'm like, we are the original nervous system physicians, this is what we're doing every single day. We're removing nervous system interference. So, what do you tell your patients? Like, and it's probably very individual, but when you are trying to quote unquote like reset their nervous system and or help them with stress, chiropractic is probably one of them. Massage, acupuncture. Do you have any other tips or tricks, or like, do you have a specific thing that you like for your patients to do while they're doing your treatments?
Absolutely. And yeah, I love that you brought up acupuncture, chiropractic. Those are probably my two. Like when I see someone who's like very, very highly stressed, I'm like, hey, do you go see a chiropractor? Have you ever done acupuncture? And it's always funny because it's always people who've never done it before and they go once and they're like, oh my God, I feel like a new person. And I'm like, yeah, welcome to chiropractic.
Right.
Yeah, and so those are really great modalities, but then there's so many free things you can do, right? Like
Mhm.
I teach my patients a ton of breath work. Like out of
Mm,
anything you can do besides grounding and getting sunshine every day, which I know isn't possible for every state in the world, especially in the winter for you guys, you probably don't want to go
mhm.
outside, but
Yeah.
like grounding, sunshine are free. Go outside,
Yeah.
put your bare
Yeah.
feet in the grass or the dirt or the beach, whatever natural earth is nearby.
Mhm.
Get some sunlight in your eyeballs. Stop wearing sunglasses unless the sun is directly in your face and you're driving, then go for it. But a lot of people don't realize that, like, if you wear sunglasses all the time, it really screws up your circadian rhythm and you don't actually know when nighttime or daytime is. And then your sleep is off. And your sleep
Uh-huh.
is when your brain detoxes, when your liver detoxes, when, all these functions happen in your body. And so that's a big thing,
Yeah.
too, that when I tell people to stop wearing sunglasses, they'll text me like 3 weeks later and be like, oh my God, Dr. Davis, I feel so calm and so relaxed, and my anxiety is like pretty much gone, and I'm sleeping like a baby. And I'm just like, yeah, because you were literally blocking all those signals
Mhm.
from the light coming into your eyes, tell your body to do so many different things, like protect your skin so you don't get sunburnt, and tell you when to go to
Yeah.
sleep at night, when to start producing melatonin, when to produce, cortisol to wake you up in the morning. And so there's so many little things that people take for granted because I feel like biohacking is such a big thing nowadays of like, get an infrared sauna and like get all the PEMF mat and all this stuff. And those things can be great, but don't
Mhm.
start there. Like start
Yeah.
with the basics. Do you go to
Yeah.
bed before 11 p.m.? Because if you're not doing that, just start there, like something
Yeah.
simple. But breath
Right.
work is so, so powerful. I mean, if
Mhm.
you just do exhalation focused breathing, and there's two really great books written on this. There's Breath by James Nestor, fantastic book. If you want to see like the effects of like nasal breathing versus mouth breathing and how different breathing exercises can like turn your immune system back on, can help you sleep, can help you lose weight, can help you become more resilient to stress so that it doesn't destroy your health when you come into these stressful things that happen in life, because it's always
Yes.
going to happen, right?
Yeah.
There's always going to be unexpected things like accidents
Mhm.
and deaths in the family, or maybe you lose a friend. And so we have to find ways to just like, even in the midst of stress and of, everything feeling so overwhelming in our outside world, we can internally reset our physiology. And breath work is
Mhm.
the fastest, most effective way to do that. So just a simple one for your listeners to start with. If you're someone who's super high stress and you're like, I don't even know how to calm my nervous system down because I'm always up here and just start with like 2 minutes a day, box breathing, but have an exhalation focus where you breathe out
Mm.
twice as long as you breathe in. So, for example, what that
Okay.
looks like is you set a timer for 2 minutes on your phone, breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 8 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and you just repeat that little box breath for 2 minutes. And then over time, just slowly increase it. Start to do like 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And I guarantee you, after especially 5 or 10 minutes of that, you're going to feel like a new person. I mean, I do
Mm.
that constantly because, I come on podcasts and I do my own podcasts and I'm on Zoom calls with patients. So I'm always talking. And so what can happen is when you're someone who has a job where you talk all day, you're basically slowly starting to shallow breathe and everything's getting shoved up here. And it really messes up your breathing biomechanics, which messes up your ability to deliver oxygen and blood flow to other parts of your body that can help heal you. So breath work is super important. So I do this between calls. If I have a really busy day where I'm
Oh.
on calls a lot, I'll do like 5 to 10 minutes of breath work and I just feel feel like brand new. Like I can breathe deeply again. Like I feel calm. I'm not up here with my shoulders, And as
That's
chiropractors, obviously we talk about that a lot, posture and all that. But the I think one of the most important things too is that it also gets your body out of that fight or flight state into that
awesome.
rest and digest state. And the important part of
Yeah.
that is not only are we now activating stimulating the vagus nerve so our gut can function better, but we're also getting blood flow away from our big muscles, like our shoulders, our glutes, our legs, because when you're in that fight or flight state, your body thinks you're running from a bear. And so it'll shoot all the blood flow to your big muscles so you can escape. And it actually pulls blood flow away from your organs, like your gut. And so when you get back down into that rest and digest state, now we can get blood flow back into the gut so it can properly heal and properly function, and nutrients can be delivered and absorbed properly. And so there's all these different functions. It's not just breathing. It's literally resetting your whole system. And that really helps your gut health long-term as well.
That is such a great nugget of information and help for our listeners. I love it. Yeah, I want to talk about your podcast a little bit. So it's called Unconventional Medicine.
Yes.
And you as of now, you've done solo episodes. So, I mean, I think it's very evident our listeners can just hear the wealth of information that you are. Whether or not they can connect with you individually, but they can definitely listen to your podcast and help themselves in that way.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get like a deeper dive into a lot of the stuff I'm talking about, like the whole idea for my podcast is, yes, I talk a lot about gut health because that's what I specialize in, but I've learned so many different things because of my own health issues. Like I talk about neurology, and eventually I'm going to talk about chiropractic and muscle work, and I have a breathwork episode I just released. So if you're really into the breathing stuff, you would definitely love that one. But yeah, it's really the whole point of it is every aspect of holistic health, because it's not just one thing that determines long-term good health. It's everything. It's like, how do we get better quality sleep? How do we, calm our nervous system down when a family member dies, or when we have an accident and now we can't work out the same way that we used to, and all these different things. And I think just really bringing hope, because I've been through so many crazy health issues that I was told were never going to be fixed, and they've all resolved. And so I've been there. And so I think one of the biggest things is that people just don't have hope anymore. And they just think like, oh, I've been to so many people, or maybe your doctor told you, oh, this can't be fixed. And it absolutely can. You just haven't found the right practitioner yet. And obviously there are certain things that have limitations. But for the most part, what I've found is that, all the neurological issues I was having, those were resolved. That chiropractor who fixed my gut started doing all the neuro rehab and then felt like a new person, like brain-wise. Because I couldn't even remember meeting people like freshman year of college. It was really bad. I had like Dory syndrome. So I had to be like, hey, I'm Kate, just had a head injury. If I forget this conversation, just remind me and it'll come back. And that's how I introduced myself to everyone freshman year. It was really embarrassing. But yeah, and so I've been there. But it also led me to learn all this neuro stuff that is so fascinating. And I love talking about the brain, and it's so interconnected with the gut that now when I'm working with someone, yes, we're doing detoxing and lifestyle changes and working on better food quality and sleep habits, but I'm also helping them improve their brain function. That's like the end of the program is like, hey, now that we got your gut functioning, let's improve brain function so we can solidify that brain gut connection. And a lot of people will be like, oh my God, I didn't realize I had all these issues, because I just have them test themselves on like balance or coordination, or look at your gait pattern and see like what's off, and here's some exercises you can do to fix it. And they're just blown away, because they're like, I've had a head injury in the past, but I didn't think it affected me. But I did that balance test and I almost fell over. And it's so crazy, because people don't realize the connection between the brain and the body. And so the goal of that podcast is just to hit every sector of holistic health, to give people little nuggets that they can use to start getting their health back on track. So I want to bring in like someone who specializes in lymphatic work, and I want to bring in chiropractors and acupuncturists, and even, personal trainers who do the same neuro stuff that I do, but do it from an athletic perspective of like improving sports performance, and, people who help people prepare for pregnancy and like childbirth and recovering afterwards, because that's a huge sector that doesn't really have a lot of knowledge. And so that's kind of the whole goal of the podcast. It is brand new, but there's some episodes on there you guys can start listening to, and I'm excited to get to the point where I bring on guests who can really just open this whole new world of things that people have never heard about before.
Well, you've been such a wealth of information. Do you take clients across the country?
Yeah, I do.
You do?
Yeah, I see people all over the country, even some international people as well, because it's really cool nowadays that, most of the lab companies will ship even to Europe or Australia, which is really awesome. So I've been able to work with some people in Canada and Europe. And yeah, it's been really cool, because they don't always have the same access to, functional medicine like we do in America. Exactly. So yeah, I work remotely, over Zoom, and yeah, if you're someone who lives anywhere else in the country, you can reach out.
Tell us how we can find you. Tell my listeners how they can find you if they're intrigued and they want to go deeper and they want to hire you to help them. Where can they find you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, Stephanie, for having me on the podcast. This has been really great, and I've loved our conversation. I love when it feels like an actual just, off the cuff conversation and not like a rigid interview. So thanks for asking good questions. And it's always cool like getting different questions from people because I love to nerd out about this stuff, as you can tell. So,
well, it's amazing. I mean, you're such an amazing guest.
Well, thank you. But yeah, so if you're listening to this episode, I know we've already touched on this, but if you're someone who thinks like, I can't even imagine, being able to go to the bathroom more like once a day, or not looking pregnant after I eat, or, not having acid reflux, just know like there is hope for you. I've seen so many people heal from this stuff, and you're not stuck this way. You're not, just because you haven't found a solution yet doesn't mean there's not someone out there who can help you. So I just want to give you that hope. But if you're just getting into like the holistic space and you just want to learn more about gut health and a lot of the stuff I talked about on the podcast, the best way to reach me is, following me on Instagram. So it's at Dr. Kate Davis. So DrKateDavis. And I've got tons of videos on there about a lot of stuff we talked about, like leaky gut and infections, how to know if you have mold or parasite toxicity, things like that. And if you're someone who's, been struggling for a while and you're wanting to work with someone to get your health back on track, maybe you have constipation or bloating or a lot of the issues that I dealt with, and you think, oh, maybe I have some of these issues that she's talking about, I am offering an exclusive discount to anyone listening to the podcast. If you want to work with me, just DM me the number 100 on Instagram, and I'll give you $100 off an initial consult plus labs package. So we can really get a full understanding of, your health history, where you've been, what you've tried already, what symptoms you're currently having, get a full picture of what's going on, and then get some full testing done to see, okay, how's your organ function, what infections, what toxins are in your body, how can we improve sleep or stress if those are issues, things of that nature, and really get you a full comprehensive picture and a really individualized, unique care plan for you, because that really is the best way to heal, is getting that really personalized care plan based on your test results, your symptoms. Not everyone is the same. Every detox is different. And so just know that, it's always good to get testing done so that you can make sure that you can heal properly. So just know, again, healing is absolutely possible. I've seen it in so many people I've worked with, even things that they didn't think were related to their gut health, like skin issues, even gum health and oral health, and, someone who didn't have to wear reading glasses anymore, mental health improving. Like there's so many things that stem from your gut. So just know that, there is a solution out there for you. And if you haven't found it yet, just know that it's still there and don't lose hope.
I love that, Dr. Kate. Thank you so much for that generous offer. So find Dr. Kate on Instagram, DrKateDavis. DM her, use the code 100 for $100 off. That is such a generous offer. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Stephanie. It's been awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast, would you please rate it, review it, like, or subscribe? You can find me on social media at wautierwellness.com, Dr. Stephanie Wautier on Instagram, or Wautier Wellness Chiropractic and Massage on Facebook. And I'm so curious where your next conversation will take you. This episode of Conversations with a Chiropractor is supported by lemon grove oil. One of the things I'm always paying attention to, both in this podcast and in my work, is where something comes from. Not just what a product says it does, but who created it, why they created it, and whether there is real care behind it. That is one of the reasons lemon grove oil feels like such a natural fit here. Lemon Grove was founded by chiropractor Dr. Jerry Del Canton. This is not a random wellness brand that appeared overnight because CBD became popular. It grew out of the chiropractic world, where trust matters, where quality matters, and where people are often looking for thoughtful ways to support themselves between visits, during their busy seasons of life, and in the day-to-day routines that shape how they feel. Lemon Grove offers professional-grade CBD products, including topical lotions, butters, roll-ons, and gummies. They focus on quality, transparency, THC-free formulations with third-party testing, and products designed with healthcare providers in mind. I think that matters because when you are choosing something for yourself or your family, you want more than nice packaging. You want to know there is a real philosophy behind it. If you're curious about lemon grove oil, visit their website at www.lemongroveoil.com.
Visit the link in the description and use code DRStephanie at checkout to save 10% on your next order. This offer is exclusive to listeners of Conversations with a Chiropractor.